In 1978, Studio 54 generated more revenue in its first year than almost any restaurant or bar in New York history. Reports at the time suggested it pulled in millions of dollars while operating only a few nights a week, in a building it didn't even own outright.
And within 2 years, its founders were in federal custody, pleading guilty to tax evasion, with the club's own liquor bottles used as evidence against them.
That contradiction is the entire nightclub industry compressed into one story. It's a business that can look like the most profitable square footage in a city, and at the same time be one bad quarter or one bad audit away from collapse. Most people who think about opening a nightclub start with the markup on a bottle of vodka. Almost nobody starts with the actual mechanics of what they're building. And that gap between the markup story and the real structure underneath it is where most nightclub owners lose their money. If you look at typical advice on nightclub ownership, most of it comes from the same angle: margin analysis. Buy the bottle for $30, sell it for $600, and the business explains itself. I've spent time going through the financial patterns of clubs in New York, Miami, and Las Vegas, and after analyzing how these venues actually behave over multiple years, not just one good weekend, the reality doesn't match the margin story. A nightclub isn't a retail business with unusually high markups. It's an attention business with a retail layer sitting on top of it. The alcohol is almost incidental to what's actually happening. What's really being sold and what actually determines whether the business survives is whether a room can convince a city that it matters more than the room down the street tonight, and then do it again next weekend. That distinction changes everything about how you'd underwrite this business financially, and it's the part most breakdowns skip entirely because it's harder to put a number on than a pour cost. Let's start with what it costs before a single drink is sold. A mid-sized club chasing a serious location, downtown core, entertainment district, somewhere landlords already know attracts nightlife, is usually looking at a build-out between $1 to $3 million. That's not decoration money. That's industrial-grade HVAC rated to cool a room packed with hundreds of moving, sweating bodies for 6 hours straight without the system failing. That's electrical infrastructure built for lighting rigs and sound systems that draw far more power than a standard commercial kitchen or retail space would ever need.
Hakkasan in Las Vegas reportedly cost close to $100 million to build, and that wasn't because the ownership group was careless with money. In nightlife, the room itself functions as advertising. An expensive room signals an expensive night, and customers price that signal into what they're willing to pay once they're standing inside it. And before any of that build-out even starts, there's the location problem, which is harsher than it looks on paper. A nightclub can't hide somewhere cheap the way a lot of small businesses can. It needs to be where nightlife already exists, or where enough affluent people can realistically be trained to show up on a Tuesday. That usually means the same expensive corridors, tourist zones, downtown cores, wealthy neighborhoods where rent was already high before you added noise, late-night foot traffic, and the word nightclub to the lease application. And once a landlord hears that word, the terms tend to shift. Nightclubs bring noise complaints, police attention, insurance headaches, and neighborhood pushback that a retail tenant simply doesn't generate. So landlords often ask for larger deposits, stronger personal guarantees, and tighter lease terms than they'd request from almost any other type of tenant. You're not just renting square footage at that point. You're paying a premium for the right to create controlled chaos inside somebody else's building, and the landlord knows exactly what kind of risk they're pricing in. Then there's licensing, which in most cities isn't a form, it's a negotiation with the city itself. Zoning approval, background checks, police review, community board hearings where residents can formally object before the venue has even opened its doors. In cities where liquor licenses are capped by number, and a lot of major markets do cap them, you're not really applying for a license. You're buying access to a scarce asset that a limited number of other people already hold. That alone can run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars before a single drink has been served. By the time the doors open on a serious project, an operator can already be several $1 million deep with it, with zero revenue collected against it.
And the money starts moving, and it moves through 4 distinct channels, each with a completely different risk profile, which is something the margin-only story never accounts for. The first is cover charge. It's the cleanest revenue in the entire business because it's collected before the guest has consumed anything and before staff has spent any real labor on that individual customer. 700 people paying $30 each before the bar has even started moving is genuinely easy money. But cover is also the most fragile stream in the building because it depends entirely on perceived demand, not actual cost or actual value. The hottest clubs can raise their cover charge and still watch the line get longer. Weakening clubs end up doing the opposite, waiving cover, discounting entry, handing out free guest list spots just to keep the room from looking half empty on a Friday. And that's usually the first visible symptom of decline, not the cause of it. By the time you see it from outside, the underlying problem has already been building for weeks. The second channel is the bar, and this is where the popular narrative about nightclubs usually stops entirely. On paper, the margins are extreme. A bottle of vodka costing $30 to $40 wholesale, sold one pour at a time for $20 to $25 a drink. But the margin on paper and the margin in actual practice are two very different numbers. Bartenders overpour under pressure because speed matters more than precision when there's a 3-deep crowd at the rail. Comped drinks go out to friends, regulars, and staff. In a dark, loud, fast-moving room, inventory shrinkage isn't a management failure so much as a structural feature of the format itself. Multiple club operators cite liquor cost leakage as one of the least controllable line items in the entire operation, precisely because the conditions that make the bar profitable are the exact same conditions that make it almost impossible to fully police.
The third channel, and the one that actually defines nightclub economics more than any other, is bottle service. This is where you see something you genuinely don't see anywhere else in hospitality. Customers knowingly and willingly paying for symbolism over product. A 10-person group might spend $5,000 to $10,000 on a table in a single night, and they are not consuming $5,000 to $10,000 of alcohol by any rational measure. They're paying for placement, for a table near the DJ booth, for visibility from the dance floor, for the sparklers and the bottle parade that signal to everyone else in the room that they're the ones currently being watched. The room is functionally sliced into layers of status, and each layer is priced separately from the others. General admission buys entry, the bar buys speed, VIP buys separation from the crowd. Premium VIP buys visibility to the crowd, which is almost the opposite instinct, and it's exactly why it commands the highest price of all. The most expensive tables in the building usually aren't the most comfortable ones. They're the ones everyone else can see most easily. That single detail explains most of how this business generates its extraordinary margins, and it's also exactly why the business is so unstable underneath. Because you're not selling a fixed product, you're selling a social hierarchy that has to be actively maintained every single weekend. The fourth channel is sponsorship and private events, liquor brand placement deals, energy drink activations, fashion label after parties, holiday buyouts, New Year's Eve packages that can be worth more than an entire slow month combined. For a lot of clubs, a small handful of nights across the calendar generate a genuinely disproportionate share of annual profit, which means the business isn't really smoothing revenue across 52 weeks. It's concentrating it into maybe 15 or 20 nights that actually matter.
Now, here's the number that makes all of this concrete instead of abstract. Say a club is doing $12 million a year, roughly $4 million from tables, $4.5 million from the bar, $1.5 million from cover, and the rest from events and sponsorships, and clearing an 18% operating margin. That's a genuinely healthy year by any standard in this industry. Now, a competing venue opens 2 blocks away, the buzz shifts, and revenue drops 20%, down to $9.6 million. That sounds survivable on the surface. It isn't, because the cost side of the ledger doesn't move with it. Rent is fixed, insurance is fixed, a large share of payroll is semi-fixed because you still need enough bartenders, security, and hosts to run the room safely even on a slower night. You can't cut staff proportional to a soft crowd without the operation visibly falling apart. A 20% revenue decline in this model doesn't produce an 18% profit decline. It can wipe out the entire operating margin because nightclub cost structures are built around a specific volume of demand, not a flexible range of it. And this is where the promoter relationship becomes the hidden liability that almost nobody underwrites properly before opening. In most clubs, a meaningful share of the crowd doesn't actually belong to the venue directly. It belongs to outside promoters who bring their own social circles, birthday groups, and the kind of bodies that make a room look alive on a Tuesday when it otherwise wouldn't. Promoters get paid flat fees, per-head commissions, or a cut of table revenue depending on the arrangement. And the deal works exactly as long as the promoter has no better offer sitting on the table. The moment a competing club offers a better split, better table inventory, or simply feels newer and more exciting, that traffic can move within a matter of weeks. The room stays exactly the same, the pipeline feeding it does not. That's a structural fragility that never shows up cleanly on a balance sheet or in a pitch deck, and it's one of the fastest ways a seemingly stable, seemingly full club starts quietly hemorrhaging Saturday night revenue with no obvious external cause visible to the owner.
Let's bring in a second, more recent example, because Studio 54 is nearly 50 years old, and it's worth checking whether the pattern still holds today. Across Miami, Las Vegas, and London, it's now common for major clubs to close, rebrand, or fully renovate after roughly 3 to 5 years, even when they were considered major successes at their peak. That's not because the ownership groups got bored or ran out of money to maintain the space. It's because the product ages culturally faster than it ages physically. A room that felt genuinely elite in year 1 can start to feel merely familiar by year 4, and familiarity is dangerous in a business model that depends entirely on charging a premium for urgency and exclusivity. The carpet is fine, the sound system still works perfectly, the kitchen equipment hasn't degraded, but the story the city tells itself about that room has quietly changed, and no amount of maintenance budget fixes a perception problem. This is also where the maintenance and legal risk layers compound each other in a way that's easy to underestimate from the outside. Drunk, dense crowds are genuinely hard on a physical space. Floors get scratched, booth leather gets torn, fixtures loosen, bathrooms take a beating night after night. Refrigeration and lighting systems fail faster under that kind of continuous heavy use. In most businesses, cosmetic wear is just cosmetic. It doesn't really affect the customer's underlying perception of value. In nightlife, cosmetic wear gets read as market wear. If the booth leather looks tired or the entrance feels dated, the city doesn't think their CapEx budget is under pressure. It just quietly decides the club fell off, and that perception spreads faster than any renovation schedule can keep up with. So venues end up in a reinvestment cycle that behaves almost like an industrial asset with a short depreciation curve. New signage, new lighting package, new visual identity. Often at exactly the moment cash flow is already getting weaker, which is the worst possible time to be spending more.
And then there's legal exposure, which is where the nightclub business stops being glamorous very quickly. If a visibly intoxicated guest leaves a venue and causes serious harm afterward, in many jurisdictions the club can end up facing a lawsuit worth far more than it ever made from that person across their entire history as a customer. Add underage entry risk, fake IDs, noise complaint enforcement, and periodic police scrutiny, and you start to understand why insurance premiums for nightlife venues run so much higher than a comparable restaurant or bar. A single serious incident can simultaneously become a lawsuit, a licensing problem, and a public relations crisis, all at once, all stemming from one bad night that had nothing to do with how good the bottle margins were that quarter. So does owning a nightclub actually work as a business model? The honest answer is that it works exceptionally well exactly as long as a very fragile condition continues to hold. That enough people in a city keep believing, week after week, that this specific room matters more than the alternatives sitting a few blocks away.
When that belief is intact, the margins are genuinely extraordinary, and very few other formats in hospitality can match the return a single well-run Saturday night can generate. But that belief isn't a fixed asset sitting on the balance sheet. It's a renewable one, and it has to be re-earned constantly against fixed costs that never soften just because the room got a little less hot than it used to be. The clubs that actually survive long-term, the multi-city groups like Tao, the operators running 5 or 6 venues instead of one, aren't the ones with the best pour cost or the tightest bottle margins. They're the ones that stopped thinking like bar owners early on and started thinking like portfolio managers of attention, spreading the bet across multiple rooms and multiple cities so that one venue losing its relevance doesn't take the entire operation down with it. If you're looking at this from the outside and the margins still look tempting, that reaction isn't unreasonable. They are real, and on a great weekend, there's some of the best numbers in hospitality, period. But the number that actually determines whether you survive is not the markup on the bottle. It's how fast your fixed costs stay exactly where they are, while your revenue behaves like a public vote that resets every single weekend, with no guarantee the city votes the same way twice. That's the number that separates the operators who quietly build real, durable wealth from the ones who end up explaining to a landlord, or in Studio 54's case, to a federal investigator, why a room that looked completely full for 2 straight years suddenly can't cover rent.